Hey guys, today I'm meeting with my friend Lucky Lee of Lucky Flow Acupuncture. Lucky, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about acupuncture.
Sure. Acupuncture is as old as the pyramids, and here to I'm here very grateful to pass on the baton and to share my art with everyone. So, I grew up in a acupuncture culture. So my mother is an acupuncturist, and now it's my turn.
Mhm.
So acupuncture has helped people for thousands of years, and we could talk about later how acupuncture could change the frequency of the body.
Okay, perfect. Actually, let's jump right in that. As you know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so
Hmm.
we're trying to kind of work with some of our friends in the community, you being one of them, to kind of help people pursue their goals of better mental health. And obviously, some of the more common issues with mental health, um, anxiety and depression. How does acupuncture help those disorders, anxiety or depression?
Sure. Thanks for asking. So we have a different take on acupuncture, on what anxiety and depression is. So instead of seeing it as an illness, I kind of see it as a blurred picture or a out of tune music. So suppose we have an example. When we talk to different people, instead of seeing them with our eyes, what if we feel them with all our senses, such as our ears, right? So we may start noticing that different people carry a different frequency. And when I talk to young people, sometimes I hear they say, "Wow, that's the vibe." When I hear that, I feel that they're so enlightened because it kind of is. So when I talk to my friend Dr. Gregory, for example, I hear something very distinct and clear, right? So perhaps something like a Beethoven piece, you know,
I'll
meeting
take
starts
it.
at 1 o'clock exactly, and to end at a certain exact time. So everything's very precise, right? Versus, let's say, if you talk to someone who may remind you of a Bob Marley song, right? Don't worry, be happy. So maybe things are not very distinct, but very harmonious, right? So if I were to draw a picture, you would be a square, and the other person would maybe be a circle,
You
right?
calling me a square? Okay.
So a diamond,
Thank you.
right? I hear when I talk to Dr. Gregory, I hear corners. When I talk to Bob Marley, if he was still with us today, I don't hear corners. I hear right round edges. And I feel that most troubled people today is that they have a hard time finding their own music, finding their own vibe or rhythm. So this is how I would explain it to a 5-year-old is that, right? Um, who are you? So some people do not have space to process who they are, to have their authentic self-expression, especially today with the massive social media where we're following all these people that we love and personalities. Sometimes that smears into who we are. So how acupuncture works is I don't want to go into all the scientific jargons because you can get all those anywhere else. Is that we find that the beat to our own rhythm, right? So if I am someone that's a diamond, if I keep hearing opinions of people that are very round, then it makes me question myself. Like, is my way of life wrong? Am I anxious for not being a circle, right? So that's how my limited understanding, how I understand it. And another thing that, if this is a little out of the ordinary for you to hear, is that um, this is this thing called Cardini circle. Have you heard of that? Or Cardini plate?
No.
So Cardini plate is invented by this German musician. Is this plate, metal plate with sand on it, and as you're playing different music and tunes on the sand plate, it forms different symmetrical patterns.
So different frequencies will basically vibrate the plate to cause that structural change.
Right.
Okay.
So that brings to mind that what acupuncture always talk about is chi. So we could understand chi as music or frequency, right? And that will always proceed matter. Now, how I see chiropractic come into this is that, let's say if the musical instrument is broken, if there are actual missing strings, or if there's actual, the plate is tilted, then you wouldn't have that harmonious shape that it comes. But yet, sometimes, let's say if the plate is correct, but if the music rhythm isn't clear, right? So that's how I imagine acupuncture comes in, is that we help people find their own shape on the Cardini plate, to help them find their own music, find them, help them find their own authentic shape, so that they can feel secure with who they are, so that they can find their own journey and purpose.
So kind of tuning the instrument, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. That was.
Okay, very cool. Good.
Mhm.
Um, can you give me an example of a time that you've been able to help somebody either with their anxiety or depression or any other type of mental disorders that you'd like to talk about?
Sure. So typically, how it's observed is we observe everything according to the season. So there's the spring, summer, fall, and winter. And when the emotion becomes very extreme, especially if it's negative emotions, then it becomes overwhelms, and then irritation, anger, punishment, and then despair, which matches up with the seasons. And then despair goes back to being overwhelmed. So the treatment structure will be structured based on what season a person is in. So a person coming in overwhelmed will be a different treatment than a person feeling despair or hopeless. I've had this one lady that's very overwhelmed about what she's going to do. When she comes in, she didn't say much, but later on, as I got to know her a little bit more, I figured out that wow, there is a good reason why she's feeling anxious and overwhelmed. She's dealing with the divorce. She's wanting to move on to her career, to go to school, and there's a lot of things in the air. So then what we did was that we set some goals, have her come in, and she started treatment. Right? She made her choice in the end to still, right, maintain her relationship while going to school, because everything was all at once too much. And she wanted to go to Harvard, but ended up going to Stanford. So that's still pretty good. She didn't go to
Yeah, rough
Harvard.
choice. Yeah.
No, and now she's working with a nonprofit group doing very big things to help, different organizations to help with compassion programs. So I think that that's very meaningful. Um, but other than that, um, specifically, I think that helps with different people with different stages. We help people, children, teens, and um, adults, and then also people who are a little bit older.
Mhm.
Typically, we see anxiety and depression in people in four stages of life. There is the younger folks that are looking for things to do to fulfill a purpose that they are called to do, whether they're creator or fulfilling their own mission, right? What can I do to make the most impact, to bring the most meaning? And then the next type of patients we see is that the patients have been working a job for a while, but they fail to see meaning in their life. So they could use a little bit clarity. So that they come into acupuncture to see how can I transition to find meaning, or to find hobbies that makes me feel fulfilled. And that, let's say they delayed acupuncture and then they come in later, is that they feel like, wow, I have done these things, but I didn't think that the things that I've done are impactful. Now I'm looking to change.
Mhm.
So at different phases of people's lives, just like the season, there are different growth pains with different seasons of people's lives. So with acupuncture, we tune the instrument, like you mentioned. Awesome analogy. We help the patient to tune into what rhythm they could use to better navigate their stressful situation.
I think it's very interesting, the season analogy, because obviously we live in Michigan, and the seasons do change and things like that. Um, but probably every January, February, I get a group of patients that come in, and they're dealing with what we call seasonal affective disorder or seasonal depression. And my usual answer to them is yes, it is winter. That is normal for your body to go through. And sometimes just giving them it is part of the process that you go through on an annual basis to kind of run through that sensation, because your body is trying to keep you alive. When we feel sometimes depressed, we don't want to go outside. Well, it's 10 degrees outside. Your body's trying to keep you inside to keep you alive, to decrease the number of calories that you burn. That's the reason that this is kind of going the way that it is. And sometimes it's helping people realize and recognize that there is nothing pathologic with the way that they're feeling, can be alleviate some of that discomfort.
Wow, I 100% agree with that. I think that's very insightful. And I want to tell you, I don't know if you see, um, I lost like, I lost like
Oh, you're
25.
looking good. Yeah.
Are we still doing the Tough Mudder? You, because
I don't,
somebody,
I don't know if we ever like 100%. I didn't sign up for one. We can do one. I'm down for it.
gotcha. But I got to tell you, there was this one person that told me everything is in training. And that reminded me that it was. And that person was you. I
Oh,
hope you know that.
no.
That was,
Well, thank you. That's a big compliment.
I know we only met for lunch that one time, but that's how it took.
We met for
So,
lunch twice. We met at we met after jujitsu. This was, I think it was before COVID,
mhm.
when we were both at Kaizen. We went, we had lunch, because we were doing something that was a transition between, or I was going between two different schools that day. It was a Sunday. And we went to, uh, uh, where did we go? I want to say we got Korean. But
Vietnamese
we
place.
went to a place in Livonia, and then we also met up at the sushi place that was in Canton.
Right.
That's when you showed me your Tesla.
Yeah.
And it almost hit a car in the parking lot. No, just kidding. We both went, you know.
Yeah. But I want to thank you for that. And
Absolutely.
part of my thing in the back of my mind is that, all right, I'm going to get in shape to do this Tough Mudder with Dr. Gregory. So
Yeah.
if you're still doing that, let me know. You
Okay.
know?
Yeah. 100%.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Um.
how are you
And
doing? How's everything? How does chiropractic help with anxiety and depression?
well, there's a number of different ways that we can do things. One is doing things such as nutritional supplementation. Um, Depression sometimes is associated with a deficiency in serotonin levels. Now, that can be from a number of different things. Serotonin is made out of tryptophan. Tryptophan is an essential amino acid, meaning that it's not something your body can make on its own. We do get some tryptophan from the bacteria in our gut, in particular E. coli. But we can also add in supplemental tryptophan in terms of 5-hydroxytryptophan or 5-HTP to convert it into serotonin. Then we can also add some magnesium to help the conversion of serotonin into melatonin for sleep. Sometimes, obviously, anxiety and depression strongly associated with inability to sleep or have other normal activities. A lot of times, though, it's people sometimes become anxious or depressed when there is something they can't do, in terms of, everyone goes through pain in their life, but different people go through suffering through different things. Like, for example, right now I have a number of my golfers coming back, and they'll say, I've been dealing with back pain throughout the winter, but now I have to go and golf, otherwise I can't see my 20 friends, like, because we have a golf league together. And so, like, he's been dealing with the pain. The pain is not the problem. The problem is actually the suffering he's going to fall into, because he cannot spend time engaging with his friends in the activity that he's been looking forward to all winter. It's like, and that's what we're actually trying to overcome and prevent. And so to alleviate the anxiety that he won't be able to participate in those events, is, how we decrease the suffering. So
Wow.
things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. What came to mind was this quote I once heard, where I like to share. Doesn't have to do with anything you just shared per
Go
se,
for it.
is that suffering exists when we fail to acknowledge the lesson that pain meant to deliver.
Hmm. No, it's
So
true.
in some ways, I feel like suffering and pain can exist independently. You
Yes,
could have pain but not suffer.
agreed.
Yeah, and you can also suffer without pain.
Correct.
So, yeah, getting rid of people's suffering, I would say, is the foremost because that's how we correct the frequency of the body.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. And wow, I what you just said about the magnesium, how it converts to melatonin, that's really great.
Yes,
I like.
magnesium does over 300 different things in the body. So you need magnesium in a bunch of different ways. Magnesium is used in many. Do you know what metalloproteins are?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Enlighten me.
So you know what a protein is, obviously.
Hmm.
Proteins have three-dimensional shape. It has a three-dimensional structure. Many proteins actually need metals in that three-dimensional structure to make sure they're the right shape. One of the most common ones that we talk about is heme, like in hemoglobin. It's what actually attracts oxygen into red blood cells. And so without iron, what ends up happening is that does not get trapped in there. So for example, I can replace that iron atom with a lead atom and it won't function well. This is actually where lead toxicity comes in because we actually decrease the ability of that protein to hold oxygen because we've swapped out the iron for lead because we have a higher density of lead. And so that's that's an extreme example. But there's a lot of different types of proteins that need these metals in order for them to function appropriately. Some of the insulin receptors are another example. They require things such as selenium, which is uh, um, a trace mineral. And so, for example, in our environment in Michigan here, I can grow many plants that don't pick up selenium from the environment because there's not much selenium. And so horses and cattle are a good example of this. A lot of times there's infertility in horses and cattle in this area because there's not enough selenium in the grass. So if they're eating grass but not taking in like supplemental selenium, a lot of times they will not be able to hold calves and things like that to, like birthing and things of that nature. And so these things are necessary for the normal functioning of our bodies, but a lot of times we don't necessarily think about them.
Gotcha. Wow, that's fascinating. What came to mind when you talked about that was that with different plants, they bloom at different times.
Yes.
So with mental health awareness, I know young people or you know older young people, we all want to bloom. But just like I have flowers outside in front of my clinic, can't have um, hydrangea all year long.
Hmm.
Hydrangea will only be okay maybe a few weeks from now, maybe not. So then, what I would like maybe cold snapdragons or snapdragons out there first. So then, I think that just like people, we bloom at different times.
Yes.
Once people could acknowledge and accept that, perhaps they could, be happy with the stage that they are at, and just be grateful for maybe the winter of their life they could use for self introspection or family or just something to do with self discovery.
Yes.
Hmm.
Very good insight.
Thank you. Sometimes I think about this because I actually love winter
Mhm.
personally.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Well, and like you said, there's, in the same way as we need rest, we need sleep. There is times when 100% what you were talking about with regards to you're not going to bloom all year long. No flower that I can think of blooms all year long. And but again, this is just a great insight for the way that we have kind of changed our what we expect out of our lives, that we need to be as equally productive throughout the entire year in the same way as I wouldn't expect an apple tree to grow apples in the spring. Like I expect that production to happen later on.